Well, hello everyone. My name is Gary Schrader, and I work for Terry Carpenter, Carpenter Associates. As you can see, I have all of our contact information up here: phone number, email, website. And if you would like to get a hold of us after you view this demo, if you need some help or some additional Dynamics GP experience, anything we can do, we'll be glad to help out. Today's session is going to be an executive desktop, and I'm going to be using refreshable Excel reports and pivot tables. Today I'm concentrating on pulling the data from Dynamics GP, but I should emphasize that the data can be warehoused in any ODBC compliant data. Anything that you can access with ODBC, you can use this functionality. Again, I'm going to be concentrating using Dynamics GP as our warehouse, but you can use anything that is accessible. So just want to make sure, emphasize that. I'm going to start off today's demonstration pulling data from Dynamics GP, but then once we get to Excel, everything will be is usable by any other data source. So with that as the background, let us begin. What are we going to be doing today? Okay, what we're going to be accessing is Excel refreshable reports, and what I mean by refreshable is the next time you open and you say refresh, it's going to reach into your data warehouse, pull the latest and greatest data, and build the pivot tables that we're creating with the new information. So again, the second point is we're going to be building the pivot table that's going to be pulling data from GP or any ODBC compliant source. We're going to be within these pivot tables, we're going to be inserting sorting and filtering options. I'll show you how to do that. We're going to be adding splicers. And splicers are ways of dissecting the data. So in our example today, we've got sales order processing type, invoices, orders, returns, so that you can pull data based on any of those fields. We're going to be inserting timelines. Timelines is a new feature with Microsoft Excel 2013. Very nice feature, and you do need 2013 in order to use that function. We're going to be linking multiple pivot tables. So for instance, in one example we're going to have customer sales, and then in a second pivot table we're going to have the products that make up those sales. We're going to be using the grouping function so that we can group dates. We're going to touch on building charts. There's millions of charts that can be created. We're just going to show an example of one. And then since this is an executive desktop theory, what we want to do is make it very aesthetically pleasing. So we're going to be adding some background pictures and what have you to make it more interesting, rather than just the rows and columns of a typical Excel spreadsheet. Again, I want to emphasize today's presentation is going to be using Dynamics GP as our warehouse for pulling data, and we're going to be using Microsoft Excel 2013. That does not mean you can't use an earlier version of Excel, and as mentioned on numerous occasions, you do not necessarily need Dynamics GP as your warehouse. Any ODBC compliant data source will work. Again, since I'm using Dynamics GP, and for our Dynamics GP customers, I wanted to show you where this information is being distributed and where you would have access to it. So we're only going to be touching on this very briefly, and we'll be getting the Excel shortly. In Dynamics GP, we have Tools, Setup, System, and Reports Setup. I have one more screen I want to show you. We're going to be within Dynamics GP, you would click on Excel Reports, and then you would show the repository where those reports are going to reside. In our example today, we're going to use GP Excel. And with that, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Dynamics GP. Here's that directory, so I'm in a folder under GP Excel. I'm going to double click on that. Dynamics GP dumps it to a second folder called Reports. Dynamics GP users would look at the various companies that you have established. So what it does is it creates a folder for each company. Since we're using the test company, there's only 2 that exist for this one. I'm going to double click on the 2. These are the modules that are available in Dynamics GP. We're going to be concentrating on sales, so I'm going to double click on sales. Last Dynamics GP comment is these are the multiple reports that are standard out-of-the-box features. When you deploy the Excel spreadsheets, these are all available immediately. You can open these, you can add fields, you can remove fields, and you can also add any other ODBC compliant software that you may want to this Excel spreadsheet. For today's example, I'm going to be looking at sales line items, and I've created one called GRS empty, and I'm going to double click on that. And as you can see, when I've got the file open, it is empty. This is the nice feature that's available. I'm going to click on Data. I'm going to click on Connections, and I'm going to click on Refresh. What this is doing, and I'm also going to close this so we can see the data behind me. What this is doing, or has done now, is it's reached into Dynamics GP, one more preface, and or any ODBC compliant data source, and it's pulling that data into Excel. So now from here forward, the assumption is, I don't care where you got the data from, we've got it in Excel, and now we're going to be doing our updates. So this in itself is pretty sweet, because you could have your customer database have have that ODBC connection to reach into your customer database, pull that information, and sitting in Excel, which most sales customers, typical users would have familiarity with Excel, and they would be able to see, say, customer balances. All of this is contingent upon security. Emphasize that as well. If you don't give someone access, they don't get it. You can restrict on that connection. You can say who sees what data. So just want to confirm that as well. Okay, so now we've got the data. Let's start playing with our pivot tables. Again, I'm going to go under the premise that you're a little familiar with pivot tables. I'll go a little on the slower side so that you can see every step I'm doing. You can obviously replay this. You can send us an email when you're done if you have any questions. So here we go. All right, I'm clicking on the upper left-hand corner, and what I'm going to do is insert, and I'm going to insert a pivot table. What it's doing is it's saying, well, what's the range? Okay, so it's looking at the sales line item default, and it's columns A through M, and it says, where do you want to put it? And I want to put it into a new worksheet. So I'm going to click OK. So at that point, here are all the fields that I've extracted, and this is going to be the table. So for today's example, what I want to do is I want to see the customer name. So I'm clicking on the customer name, and as you can see, we now have the names on the left-hand side, and they are automatically sorted in alpha order. In Dynamics GP, I know the field called extended price is the sales, so I'm going to put a check mark there. And I don't want that in a row, I actually want that as a value. So I'm grabbing, right-clicking, and pushing over to the value. Now this is not what we want, but you can see it has done a count. So for every sale that has taken place for Aaron fits, there's 110 sales that have taken place. We don't want sales. We want to know what is this total dollar amount. So I'm going to change. I did a right click. I'm clicking on Value Fields Settings, and I'm changing that from account to a sum. And I'm going to say OK. So that quickly it's changed. We've reached into our data file. We've got by by customer. We've got our sales. I prefer commas and no decimals, so what I'm going to do again, I'm going to right click. There's multiple ways you can do this. Actually, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on Value Field Settings. Much like we did where we moved it from count to sum, I'm going to click on Number Format, and I'm going to change it from number, putting in decimals with a comma, and I'm going to remove the decimals and say OK. Now, we're starting to form something here pretty good, but let's sort this. So again, I've done a right click on the data, and I'm going to sort, and I'm going to sort from largest to smallest. So now we've got our total sales, and this is everything that we've extracted that sits in this sales line items table. Here is our customer, and here's our sales. This is everything that we've pulled. Now, that might be, so if we scroll down, this is a lot of data to look at, and if an executive is wanting to look at this information, he doesn't want to see all this, so maybe he only wants to know the top 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click on, I'm going to right click on the salesperson, and I'm going to filter, and I'm going to select top 10. Even though it says top 10, we can change that. As I do the show, you can do the bottom or the top, and this is just a number where we can move it up or down. In this case, I'm going to say, give me the top 15. And lo and behold, now we have that quick. We've got sales by customer sorted in descending order. Here's our top 15. Well, that's getting there, but that includes every type of sales, and we don't have any date limits on this. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to look at a splicer. Remember I mentioned something about that? Well, what I've done is I've clicked on Insert, and I've clicked on Splicer, and what I'm going to do is splice the data. And again, this is a Great Plains piece, but I know sales order, SOP, sales order processing type, contains that information. So now I've got, here's what makes up those total sales. Well, an order gets converted to an invoice, so really that's the key. So I'm just going to click on Invoice. So now, and then there's a couple other options. I'm going to do a right click and do Splicer Settings, and I can hide items with no data, which I'm going to do that as well. I don't want to see that. So I'm going to squeeze this up a little bit. So now we've got invoices, but this is from the beginning of time. So let's say I'm going to do a right click, and I'm going to say Show My Field List. And I'm going to pick Document Date. Click on Document Date, and I'm going to put that in the column. Whoa! Now we've got every occurrence of that, every time a sale is made, we've got the date of that. Well, I'm not sure that's the way we want to look at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to insert that new function I mentioned, a timeline. In a timeline, I'm going to pick Document Date. So now that's that same information we just saw, but in a little cleaner format. With the test data, I think I can concentrate on January, and I'm not going to I'm using my shift and I'm clicking on my mouse to January, February, and March. So this now represents total sales by these top 15 customers, their invoices for the period January through February of 2013. So that we've made some pretty good progress in a very short time. But now let's look at what our sales are for that time frame. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy. So I'm right clicking and I'm highlighting the entire spreadsheet. I'm copying and I'm going over and I'm going to do a paste. Again, what this has done is provided the same information. It's a duplicate. I actually mentioned right clicking, I left click that. Emphasize that again. Okay, so now if I right click and say show the field list, okay, and we can see it here, this time I want to see the item description. So now you could, if this is what you want to see, we could see Plaza 1 sold $70,000, and here's the items that made up that $70,000. For today, or for the presentation I want to do, I want to see the quantity. And I don't want to see it in a row, I want to see it in a value, so I right clicked and moved over, and I am doing a field setting, and I'm clicking on sum. So now, and then I'm going to do one more where I'm going to, I'm going to get into here, and I'm going to do a filter, and again I'm going to pick my top 15, and one more I'm going to do the right click, and I'm going to sort, and I'm going to sort largest to smallest. I'll close this to make it a little more readable. And so now we've got, in the months of January, February, March, we had 260,000 sales, and these are the items that were sold during that time frame. I mentioned in our what are we going to see, as far as our agenda, is I want to show linking these pivot tables. Well, now if I click on only January, you can see that these are tied together, so that we're only seeing the sales for the month of January, and we're only seeing the items for the month of January. Again, I hit my shift and my left click, January, February, March, and I'm back to my 260,000 and 271 items. The only thing in design that I should mention at this time is when you do your top 10, top 15, what have you, it records the ties. So for instance, this spreadsheet or this little pivot table is a little bit bigger than this one. These are a top 15. If we said give me the top 15 and there was somebody that had 380 in sales, it would present that as well. So ties are shown. So in this case, the last 3 items are all 8, so the top 15 includes ties. Again, that's just a design thing, so you know what I'm talking about. All right, so I think this would work great, for your typical end user. But if we want to make this something flashy for an executive, or at least a little more readable, let's add some love to it. Like that. What we want to do is we're going to go to Page Layout, and I'm going to click on Background. What this is doing is it's reaching out. You can get it from a file. I'm going to grab it from Office, and I'm going to do Amount. And I'm going to hit Enter, and what it's going to do is reach out, and it's going to grab anything. You can pick any one of these pictures. I'm going to pick this one. I kind of like the short, and I'm going to say Insert. And so now I've got a nice little background, but it's kind of, made my spreadsheet not readable. So what I'm going to do is, I'm still sitting at the grid lines. I'm sitting at the page layout. So on the grid lines, I'm going to click uncheck to view the grid lines, and it takes those away. When we get further along, when you're just about ready to finalize it, you can also take out the headings, and what that will do is give you more information to display and get rid of all of this up here at the top. I'm not going to do that now because we still need to access. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click, and I'm going to highlight this area. I'm going to go to Home, and I'm going to Fill, and I think I'm going to pick a lighter gray so that we can see that information. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to do my right click, and I'm going to pick the same color. So, nothing fantastic, but it definitely looks a lot cleaner, a lot flashier than the typical rows and columns. So the next thing I want to do is we're going to add a little chart. So I'm going to take, this same spreadsheet, and do right click, and I'm going to copy and position to a lower spot in the spreadsheet, and I'm going to paste. So again, we've got the same information as we had before. One thing, what I forgot to mention, let me go back up here. When you click on these row labels, to make it more information, more descriptive, I'm going to type in customers, and I'm going to type in total sales, and we can also do the items. Times items, ITEMS, and let's make that quantity sold. Okay, now scroll back. I'm sorry about that. So now we've got that same grouping as we've had before, but let's add a new feature. Well, not a new feature, but this one's going to be a splicer again, but we're going to use it a little differently. So I'm going to add the splicer. Oh, I didn't like that. Let me get back into our table here. Now we're going to put the splicer in. And I'm going to pick the customer name, and I'm going to say OK. So now we've got all of our customers again. Since Plaza 1 is sitting at the top, let's pick that as our example. So I'm going to pick Plaza 1, and then let's click on there, and let's show our field list, and in the column let's select document date. And as you can see, again, we have all of our, each occurrence of the sale during that January to March time frame we selected previously. So there is another feature on this where we can say Analyze, and what we want to do is, so I clicked on Analyze, and we're going to click on Group Field. And so what we want to do is we want to group by months, and I'm holding the the control, and clicking on my mouse on the left side and saying OK. And so now we have our sales for January, February, and March going across here. Now let's go. Let's play with the chart. So I'm clicking on the field, and what I want to do is I want to insert, and I'm going to pick a bar graph. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to do a TD version. And not a lot going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the chart itself. I'm going to select data, and what I want to do is I want to flip flop the rows and the columns. So when I say OK on that, and what I did, just to be sure, is I right clicked in the chart, I did a select data, and then I said switch the row and the column. So now this looks a little better, that at least you can see the progression from January sales to February sales, and we got a great March. And at this point, you could probably put this right over here, and your executives could, select. I don't know if we had any sales in there. Let's go back. They had a little bit. If we go back to our customers with higher sales, Astor Suites. Let's go. We'll jump back. I'm going to move up to Astor Suites, and looks like they had all of their sales in March, or at least comparatively, 42,000 versus 30 and 20. But you get the idea of what I'm trying to do. So you could put this in the hands of your executive for them to do this type of analysis. And, again, we've only done one chart, very limited data, but, within the charting you could, have your ups and downs, all the features you could add for the chart. Okay, so now I'm going to go back up to the top. The only thing that I might do additionally, I might insert a column. Try again, insert. I clicked on it. I'm probably going to do another column. Insert. And what I might do is insert a picture at this point. And sample pictures, I don't have any, so maybe off my desktop, downloads, logos, how about Huddle Youth? A little bigger than I want, but what we'll do is make that much smaller. Sorry, it's taking a little longer than I expected, but ultimately what I'm trying to do is show you an example. Let's go insert, grab that logo, move it up here, drag it up here. And okay, put that up there. Maybe put in, our company name. And that's probably not very good, so we're going to do a background. We can pick white. Pick a font of, what do we want to pick? Dark green, make it 20, make it italics, and, okay, you get the idea of what I'm trying to do. So now, at this point, we've got an Excel spreadsheet. I mentioned we could do the page layout, and now we could get rid of our headings. So we've done page layout, view headings. Let's see, we also want to get rid of this up here. I'll come back to that in a minute. But ultimately what I'm trying to do is create, so that when we save this Excel spreadsheet now, put it on the executive desktops, on their executive desktop, when they open this and hit refresh, they're going to be grabbing the latest and greatest data from your accounting system or whatever other system you may set this up for. I'm hoping this made sense to you guys. Here's an example of what I was trying to get to, my final version. But you can't wait to get that on their desktop. And let's go one more. Let's go back up to page 1, and what I'm trying to do is get. So, if you wanted further information on how to do this, anything you have any questions, you can feel free to call Terry at that number. My email is Gary@TDCarp if you want any additional information. So I'm hoping this was very helpful to you and put you right at it, get you to working as quickly as possible. And you guys have a great day. Thank you very much.